Oh, everyone needs to watch your P's and Q's now.
I did not drive that fast.
You didn't drive that fast like that. But yeah, that's funny. That's funny. But well, we're glad that you got home safely, even though
More or less.
you killed a mattress. Yeah, like that. Like that's
Matricide.
yeah, matricide.
There wasn't
that's
anyone
something else.
using the mattress at the time, I assume. There wasn't anyone using the mattress at the time.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I think they're still stuck in my grill.
Can I recommend that you don't say anything more?
Yeah. That's funny. Oh, here's Pam. Hello, Dolores. Come on in. Come on in. Pam is joining us. All right. Let's see. It takes that computer. I think I've got the wrong RAM in this computer or something. I don't know what's going on. Or maybe I just need this. No? Oh, she just hasn't come in completely yet. I know. That computer I built like over a year ago works great on everything but Zoom. And the whole reason why I built that computer was for Zoom, and it chugs on Zoom. I do not.
You up at the very top.
The what?
Oh, yeah, to the right.
Anyway, Jim.
Oh, I can change how I see it. Like, and so.
I can't see it because there's
Yeah.
a lot of glare from the window.
Oh, really? Yeah, there you go.
Hey, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Speak up. I'll put a mattress in front of it if you like.
Yeah. You'll see it.
I won't live that
Yeah. The good news is I have a short
Yeah.
problem. I won't
He hit a mattress on the way home, like in Fort Pierce. Like all that.
Off of somebody's roof.
Yeah, they just couldn't hold it down. Like that.
Yeah, hold it down like this and drive 80 miles.
Yeah. Like
It's
that's
not going anywhere.
all right. There's Pam. She's in.
Fortunately, it was a queen size mattress.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could just drive right over it.
Yeah. Good to see you, Pam. Good to see you. Like that. Yeah. Hi. The it was a firm song.
That makes a difference.
It's a bigger hole in your grill.
Yeah, that's funny. The part of the itinerary for me today is that there's a big pastor meeting down in Weston, like basically Fort Lauderdale, and Meshach and I are going down there to ask for support from churches down there. So like that's at 3. So he and I need to get on the road rather timely after this meeting. So So we are in 16. We read it, but did not study it. So we're continuing on from what has come before it, and Jesus is really he's talking about all of this like defiling. One of my notes that I have on there is it's not about the procedure of it all. Doing the procedure of all these things isn't what makes you holy. Like Jesus basically says that it's not what comes out of your mouth, but you put stuff in and then you expel it, and that's what's bad. Like all those things. And so he goes through there, and we talked about the woman, the Gentile woman, the Syrophoenician woman, Gentile. And Matthew calls her a Canaanite, which is interesting. She says yes, even the crumbs are enough, and so that's that. And actually going through that study, this part actually helped us with the planning. for the Matthew series, because I knew that this was all about, like, these chapters around here about one idea. And so, like, that was heavy. And it kind of seems like everyone wants something big, but it's this idea that the crumbs are enough. The crumbs are enough for this, and enough for the lady, and it's like us, are the crumbs enough? And so we get into 16, and we see the Pharisees, the crumbs aren't enough for them, and that's
They're just crummy.
yeah. Well, they don't want to be so crummy though. They want to be high and mighty. Like that's so we are going to continue on through 16. I have a little note from our reading last time that I think that there's a bad chapter break here. At the end of chapter 15 should actually be 16, verse 12. 16:12. So as we're reading through chapter 16 here, you can analyze that and see if you agree or not. So here we go. Chapter 16.
Then the Pharisees and Sadducees came, and testing him, asked that he would show them a sign from heaven.
When it is evening, you say, "It will be fair weather, for the sky is red." And in the morning, "It will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and threatening." Hypocrites! You know how to discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign shall be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah.
And he left them and departed. Now when his disciples had come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread.
Take heed, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
And they reasoned among themselves.
It is because we have taken no bread.
But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them,
"O you of little faith, why do you reason among yourselves because you have brought no bread? Do you not yet understand, or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you took up? Nor the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets you took up? How is it you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees?"
Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. When Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples,
"Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?"
Some say John the Baptist, some Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets.
"But who do you say that I am?"
Simon Peter answered,
"You are the Christ, the Son of the living God."
"Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven."
Then he commanded his disciples that they should tell no one that he was Jesus the Christ. From that time Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised the 3rd day. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him.
"Far be it from you, Lord. This shall not happen to you."
"Get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men."
Then Jesus said to his disciples,
"If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. Assuredly I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom.
Okay. All right. So, what did you see? What did you notice?
It's become increasingly apparent to me why Jesus often went off on his own.
He's surrounded by people that come
Yeah, yeah.
I told you 4 times, it's not bread.
Yeah. like that's the whole the bread thing is like they just, is it because we brought bread? Like that's
You forgot the bread.
Squirrel.
yeah. And it's like Mark does it a ton. Like the and that's kind of Mark's point, is that he's just like the disciples cannot get it right. Like over there, and you see some of it in Matthew, just like Jesus face palming. It's like, boys don't understand what I'm saying here.
Actually, if you would go,
I know. Come on. Yeah. So it's so yeah. What else? What do you think about my thought of the chapter ending there? Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that. So
Yeah.
the chapter endings are, we haven't talked about how the Bible was written in a while. So the chapter endings, the chapter breaks, the verses were not in it originally. Those were added 500,000 years later, and as do what?
Might not have been that long.
Yeah. They were added later to help in finding things.
by whom?
By I don't know, like the church.
Probably
Scott,
scribes.
like
The
that's,
scribes.
yeah, like that's
Those who rewrote it.
yeah. Those and mostly they do a pretty good job. I think, and there's record of me on here saying that there's a couple places where the chapter breaks are bad because there's a continued idea. There's a couple places in Paul's writings where I think the chapter breaks are incredibly unhelpful. Like there is an idea that's continuing on, and I think there's one, we won't get into it. I think there's one it's pretty nefarious on a chapter break. But these chapter breaks, I think this one is just 15 was already kind of long, and so they probably just broke it at the Pharisees and Sadducees. But I think this idea that Matthew is doing is continuing on about these crumbs are enough, and the Pharisees, they want these signs. They want these big things. They want all of this. They're seeking after a sign. And he's like, the only sign you're going to get is the prophet Jonah. Like that's what you're going to get. And if you think about Jonah, he wanted all the big stuff in life too, but he got thrown into a whale and
3 days.
for 3 days. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Inside of that big fish. But the whole thing is that the Ninevites, which the Ninevites would be very similar to this Canaanite woman. Basically, the Ninevites in that story said the crumbs are enough. Like their whole thing. The reason why I know this is that we just did all this planning and all that. And I'm pretty sure Jonah is the Old Testament reading for this week, next year. But it's they said the Ninevites, when Jonah came and did a terrible basic sermon, and they're basically they repent, and they're like, who knows, maybe this God will relent. And that's a very the crumbs are enough statement. It's like, we're going to go through this, maybe this God will relent. And so And he's saying that the Pharisees, that's not what they want.
So one more time, where would you have started 16?
I would,
Peter's confession.
yeah, Peter's confession. Like that, because it kind of changes. It kind of like it's all kind of fluid, but there's a new idea starting here in verse 13 of chapter 16, because you also have like Jesus railing against the Pharisees. It's like, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And like you can tell the disciples aren't listening. That's kind of what you're talking about. They're like, leaven. Like, is he mad because he's hungry? Like, does someone need to get does someone need to get Jesus a Snickers bar? Like that's and he and he's like, that's not what it's about, fellas. like that's you guys are all deluded. It's because and he talks about the feedings. He's like, do you not understand? Remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000, how many basketfuls you took up, nor the 7 loaves and the 4,000, how many large basketfuls did you take up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning the bread? And so right there, if anybody ever doubts about the importance of the numbers in here, that there are good numbers and there are bad numbers, Jesus is saying, did you notice how many basketfuls were left over? Like and so I'm ruining the sermon. Like, we basically wrote the main idea for this sermon on Monday, and it's the whole crumbs are enough, and the whole thing is that the crumbs filled up 7 basketfuls. Like that's like that's and that's the leftovers filled up, the crumbs off the table, so to speak. So like that's, and we thought that was it's a good idea. It's a good idea. And so so I don't know, I'm talking a lot. Like, what's going on? Anyone have any other ideas? So then they understood to be wary of the Pharisees and Sadducees. So let's go on to the next section. Peter confesses Christ. So this was in the Gospel of Mark. It says they came to the region of Caesarea Philippi. I kind of wish the English translations would translate this what it is. Does anyone remember what Caesarea Philippi means? You remember?
Caesar's city.
Caesar's Philippi, like a Caesar's, like it's like Caesarea kind of hides it, but it means Caesar's. Like, so this town was created out of nothing. They built a little mini Colosseum there. They built all this stuff to honor Caesar, and you got to remember, like, Caesar is viewed as the son of God. Like these themes are much stronger in Mark than they are here, but he's hitting the same stuff, that Caesar is regarded as like as a divine being walking around, all that stuff. And so it's no accident, and I wish they would just drop Caesarea and just call it Caesar's, because we would see it more then. It's no accident when it says, who do people say that I, the Son of Man, which is a title of Caesar, am? Like it's like knives into the eyes of Caesar's reputation. It's going on. There's probably like a huge statue. It's like walking into any center of government complex anywhere in the world where you have these huge statues to all of these things, and like Caesar would have had that. And
We commented on yesterday. In
pre-gaming the Bible study.
In Vance's
We were talking Acts.
group,
Oh
we
yeah,
were talking about Caesarea, and I volunteered that the Romans went, they recreated Rome. They weren't living in tents.
No.
This was a big deal.
Yeah.
And as you suggested, the biggest of the deals is Caesar.
Yeah.
It's Tiberius at that time. Good, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. The note in here says that Caesarea Philippi was to distinguish it from the magnificent city of Caesarea, which Herod the Great had built on the coast of the Mediterranean. Caesarea Philippi, rebuilt by Herod's son Philip, who named it after Tiberius Caesar and himself, was north of the Sea of Galilee, near the slopes of Mount Hermon. It was originally called Paneas, because there was a shrine to god Pan, and it was located there. But that's interesting because there's two Caesars, there's Caesarea and Caesarea Philippi.
Yeah. So,
I don't know.
Pam, did you want to say something?
No, I'm just remarking on that. I'll let you go ahead because my question is at the very last verse.
Oh, okay, yeah. But the whole thing with it being called, Caesar's, Philippi, and all that, there's going to be a lot of very strong, even maybe Davidic honor towards Caesar, and like that's something is supposed to get into your mind when you're reading this, because he mentions this place like that, and says like, so who do people say that I am? And this puts direct conflict with Caesar, I think. Like that's it's this whole movement and all of these things. Now again, I say I think this plays a lot stronger in Mark, but it's in Matthew he's hitting the same drum. He's hitting the same drum. So what do you guys think? How do they all answer and all that? What do you think?
I always wondered why people would think that he was one of the prophets who was in the Old Testament and died. I mean, it's like, why do they think he's that? They think he came back? I mean, it's a question to me. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Weren't the prophets expected to come back?
Yeah, especially Elijah.
Yeah, Elijah.
Especially Elijah, because Elijah never died.
Right.
So remember, Elijah was taken up in the chariot, up into heaven, into the heavens, into God's kingdom. So Elijah never died. So they fully expected Elijah to come back. So like there's, and even like the Seder meals that we did, like there's always the empty chair for Elijah. So they're like, oh, here's Elijah back. John the Baptist.
Do you know how many times I sat in the chair by mistake?
Oh, did you?
Oh, man.
Didn't know it was like a Santa, right? Like that.
That's because you belong to the children's table.
Yeah.
Mick, not there.
No, not there. So yeah, there's the seed for Elijah with all of those. They expected that to come back, but some say that he's John the Baptist. Like that's what was a couple chapters earlier. They kind of thought that. Like we're like, man, he's back. Another one of the prophets, and so that's kind of what's going on there. And he's like, these are who people are saying. Like one of the prophets would be, or maybe he's a new prophet. There's like, these are what people are saying about you. And he's like, who do you say I am? And Peter, confesses correctly. He probably adjusts his tie. That's like that you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Saying that underneath all this Caesar stuff, like that's like it's important to realize that it's an important distinction that's being made. And blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, which does any of the Bibles?
Son of Jonah.
Son of Jonah. Does any of the notes do anything with that? Like, is it just treating that as a name?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So Jonah means son of faithfulness. Like that's peace. No. What is, I think the Yeah, I think it's faithfulness is what Jonah means. Yeah, and so that's what the name means. Why, and that's why it's a joke in the book of Jonah. Like that's his name means faithfulness, and he's not faithful. And so
Now, is that really his surname, or is that an implication that because he recognized the Christ?
well, and that's why I was asking if anyone's Bibles do anything with it. Like that's because Jesus just quoted, 3 minutes earlier, the sign of Jonah is the only one that you're going to get. And so, I don't know if we're going too far by connecting then that, Simon, son of Jonah, Bar Jonah, for the flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And that's making a strong spirit reference there, the Spirit of God reference. And then he's like, Peter, like I say to you, you are Petros, which means rock, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell, Hades, shall not prevail against it. Like that's what's fun about that, him naming Peter, which, like, and this is my favorite joke that no one ever laughs at, like which is arguably like a sweet nickname, like that's like just getting like, it's like I'm gonna call you the Rock type of thing. That's like if someone starts calling you the Rock, that's kind of, it's a sweet nickname to be given.
Is that a request? Would you like us to call you the Rock?
No, I want something cooler. Like that's
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it. Yeah.
All right, ice.
Ice.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So the Rock. Now we got to talk about here just for a second the Lutheran view versus the Catholic view here. You guys all know the Catholic view, right? The Catholic view is that Peter is the first pope, and upon this rock, the first pope, I am going to build my church. I actually hold that same view. It's over there. That is not the Lutheran view, though. The Lutheran view is that Jesus is saying it's the confession. It's the confession, and upon that confession, I'm going to build my church. So that confession is, you're the Christ, Son of the living God. And I can see where they get that. I think there has to be some gymnastics that you have to do with the languages to get there, to all that. But you got to remember, Protestant means protest, and we are protesting the Catholics when all of this came out. So we can't really be having too much of the Catholic stuff. So like that's, I think there's valid views in both of those, and I don't think they really need to be divorced too far from each other, right? But the reason why I like that Jesus says, Peter, I'm establishing the church upon this rock, is because of what comes right after it. That Peter screws up.
Yes, we can see.
And I don't like that it's the confession, because I think the confession denies what Peter ends up doing right after this. And we always see that Jesus always bends. What have we been calling it? Procedure. Jesus always goes away from the procedure, and where he's establishing the church off of good procedure doesn't seem to be on brand, but Jesus establishing the church on part of a fallible, sinful person seems very on brand. Like that, just to me. I don't know. I'm trying to say fighting words. Does anyone want to fight? Like that's right. Like that's.
Doesn't it say that Christ is the chief cornerstone?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's why I assumed it meant.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not far from that kind of classic Lutheran view there. Like that's, yeah. And so that's that. In other places, Jesus says that he's the cornerstone, and all of those things.
A lot of that in the Old Testament.
Yeah, and then also there's just a lot of church in this little section, because he says that you're the Christ. So if you've ever noticed, I don't know if any of mine have it. I never really look at mine, but the stoles. If you ever looked at some stoles, they'll have like keys on them.
Yeah.
This is where that comes from.
Office of the Keys.
Yeah, office of the keys is that the office of the pastor, but that's like I sit in the office of the pastor. I am not the office of the pastor, right? So like that's in different churches and different understandings of this. I'm a big fan of having people also sit like it's almost like I'm an overseer of that office of the pastor, and there's other people fulfilling those roles as well and caring for others and all of those things. But that office there of the keys is what we call it, is the keys of the kingdom, and that is whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you loose on earth will be loose in heaven. Whatever you bound people up with and don't offer forgiveness, it will be bound. And whatever you do forgive, it will be forgiven. Like that's a pretty good statement. And when you start thinking about that phrase in that procedure argument, but also in what I think is the verse of this of the whole book is chapter 7 verse 12, which is, therefore whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. And you're seeing, I think, a further clarification of that. Whatever you forgive will be forgiven. Whatever you don't forgive won't be forgiven. I think it's a further clarification of what's going on in 7. I think that's the main idea. And so does that make sense? If it doesn't,
Do that again.
Now. Okay. So
Who forgives?
So well, I think it's that office of the
Who
keys.
doesn't?
I think it's that office of the keys. But I think there's a certain part of it to where we're all kind of functioning in that. But it primarily functions from that what we in the Lutheran Church call the pastoral office. And that's why you hear, like, we don't say it here, but in other liturgical denominations you'll hear, I, as a called and ordained servant of the word, and instead, and by the command of our Lord Jesus Christ, I forgive you all of your sins. Like I'm not a big fan of all the legal speak like that's, and instead, and by the command, like all that stuff. I'm not a big fan of all that. So like I skip all that stuff and just say your sins are forgiven.
I'm meaning to talk to you about that.
Oh yeah. You want the
every Sunday.
Every Sunday you want the in the stead and by the command. Yeah, like that. You like that legal speak, huh? Like that procedure. And so
I'm having difficulty with your comfort that Peter is the first pope. I can't reconcile that to, as much as I know about Lutheranism. You are my pastor, and I don't know where you're taking me.
Oh, no, I'm not taking you to Rome. I'm taking you to like Peter is recognized as kind of the head there at the beginning.
That's not Pope.
Well, it's
different.
there's like, so I want
There's a difference between a CEO and God.
Yeah. So all right, so let's get rid of the word Pope and just use the first guy, like that.
The first guy,
like that's something like that. Like I've never spent any real time in the Catholic Church. I got no hangups with the word Pope. So like that's.
That's precisely right.
Yeah.
It is a trigger.
Yeah, it's a trigger. So maybe I'm trying to trigger for a reason. I don't know. Let's see. But it's.
You're such a scamp.
And but like, well, so if it's not Pope, then get rid of the word Pope and think about what is being said here. What's being said here? about Peter? What does it mean for Jesus to say upon this rock?
He's saying that he's going to use, depending on how you interpret this, he's
Yeah.
going to use Peter to build his church.
Yeah.
And whether you call him the Pope or not, he's going to be the leader of
Mhm.
of the church as it grows.
Yeah.
And that ends up being recognized among the apostles and the disciples and go back to Peter.
Yeah.
And Peter is the guy who initiates the speeches at Pentecost and again in the book of Acts. We get several of them. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's what he's saying is that you're going to be the person that I'm going to build my church,
Mhm.
use to build my church.
Yeah. And I think this is incredibly strong. And I know I keep going back to Mark, but Mark is Peter's story. And like it's over there. And Matthew has other stories that he's telling besides just this one. But in Matthew, this one's important to him. But it is Peter's, Peter is kind of the establishment of all of this. And why I like that it's resting on Peter, because Peter gets it wrong next. Peter gets it way wrong. And when you think about what we just talked about before with the Canaanite woman, that the crumbs are enough, that the crumbs, like the leftover crumbs of that feast of the 5,000 and the 4,000 were enough to fill 7 basketfuls. Like that's the crumbs of Peter's reputation are enough to build the church. Like, is that, like, what do you think?
That's a bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah.
But
I
okay.
think bless your heart.
It's okay. It's okay.
You've left me a long time
It's a
ago.
bad taste.
It's a bad taste.
Yeah, bad taste.
So like that's, but what, like, so get rid of the word pope. Get rid of the word pope.
Because the word pope, the next word that comes to mind is infallibility. And
Yeah.
that-
Yes, this is true.
and
No,
that
I
was a
don't,
bad taste.
I don't agree with the infallibility. I don't agree with the infallibility.
Neither did I.
Catholics do.
Yeah, the Catholics do. The Catholics do. They have the infallibility thing.
I can
But-
just
Isn't the Pope considered the Father?
Papa.
Yeah, the Father. Who is the Father? God, not
Yeah.
the Pope.
So here's what I'm saying. I'm basing it. That's why I don't like the infallibility argument. I'm saying that the thing that's going to be established is upon the fallibility of it, not in the perfect understanding.
Right, because he's
No.
not God.
Yeah,
God is the only perfection.
yeah.
Okay, that'll.
Like, see, that's where I'm going. Is that where we're going to read next?
I don't think you should ever use the word perfect.
Seriously. Well, I've learned today that I'm not going to unless I want to get under some skin.
It's conservative, especially for a new guy.
Yeah.
Did I make a wrong turn somewhere?
So like that's, but like the reason why because I think like we've already talked about the crumbs being enough. And Peter, he's like, upon this rock I'm establishing a church. And then he goes right after this, like it's, and that's not on accident, that Jesus starts talking about, let's see, verse 21, to show his disciples they must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed and be raised on the 3rd day. Again, this is all under the shadow of Jonah. Here, the sign of Jonah and all that stuff. Yeah, the 3 days. Jonah was in the fish for 3 days. And so then Peter, who is the rock on which he's establishing everything, takes him aside and rebukes him. Like it's like, come here. Like we've been following you for years now, and you're gonna talk about you're gonna go to Jerusalem and die? That's just not the plan. This isn't good. We just left Caesarea Philippi talking a big game about you being the Christ. And you praised us for that, and you're just going to go and die? Like that's, and and you're talking what, 20 seconds of reading from the keys of the kingdom, establishing the church, to being called Satan. Get behind me, deceiver.
But you have to remember too, the Christ had a different connotation for the Jews.
The Messiah.
Yeah, they were looking for a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
So when he says you are the Christ,
He has a different perception.
he's really saying you're the guy that's going to come with the sword and throw the Romans out.
Yeah, exactly. So what Lee is saying there is that Christ and Messiah and King, Messiah is Hebrew, Christ is Greek, and King is English. Like there's some differences because there's always differences in translation, but are basically the same word. And so that's why I think it's funny when we do Christ the King Sunday. And I like to call it King the King Sunday. Like that's, and so when we say Jesus Christ, we're saying Jesus King. We're saying King Jesus.
But Christ is also saying that I understand that my leaders are not going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I like the establishment on Peter, because
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
Is Peter a crumb? I'm not being facetious.
I think we end up seeing that. I think that's what we end up seeing, because he denies Jesus. Big point. And I got to make sure that I don't go straight into Mark. Like that's, because Mark is Peter's story, and Mark just denigrates Peter the entire time because Peter's writing about himself. Like that's at least that's what I believe. Is that's Peter's Gospels, the Gospel of Mark. It's what he wrote. But we're seeing the same kind of going forward here, and we're going to get into chapter 17, and again Peter says foolish things here too. I think maybe that might be only in Mark, but that's so he takes him aside and calls him Satan. Get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but on the things of men. And that's what Lee was saying.
He's actually telling him that you're thinking I'm going to be the Messiah, and
And the way
I'm
you
God,
want.
right?
Yeah. Like that's
No white horse. No white.
Well, and it goes back to Judges. What we're talking about with Judges right now, where everyone's doing what is right in their own eye. And I don't care who I have to hurt, who I have to do, but I need to get my way, type of thing, And that's a very, that's what Peter's doing here. We see it in Judges. It's this constant push towards this way, and Jesus keeps pushing us back to that chapter 7, what we call the golden rule, And he says that the golden rule is the summation of the law and the prophets. He doesn't say, I have something new for you. Throw away those law and prophets. Just love your neighbor. He's going, no, this love of neighbor is the law and the prophets. Like that's.
Well, doesn't Peter bring that out in his books when you start reading 1st and 2nd Peter?
Yes.
Someone's listening to somebody else.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like he's been through the ringer.
He says that a lot about loving one another.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's, you guys just went through Cornelius, or you've been through, just went through Cornelius in your Acts class on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Cornelius. Like that's one that I have to try not to preach, because it'll just be every week. I love because Peter basically realizes that he's, to use our language here, like a crumb. And he's like, I'm considering this guy a crumb. Like, I'm a crumb. Like, why, everything's okay. It's. I think the last sermon I preached on that one was called "It's Not About the Bacon." Like that. That's don't call. It was Jesus say in Acts, don't call unclean what I have made clean.
Right.
Like that's, and that's, and I think don't denigrate the crumbs. Like that's, don't denigrate them. and like and this is probably a dumb take. Like, listen, I get it, and I'm working it out with you guys right now. It's but that this dumb take is that like he's taking all of Peter. Like that's, and I think Peter is the everyman, and that we are meant to read Peter through our own eyes. You know, we're meant to look at Peter and go, I get that. And I think all the Gospels do that with Peter. That we're meant to see ourselves through him. And so like that's kind of where I am on this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Did I smooth it over enough? I can bring back the P word. Yeah, Pop-Tarts, right? There's speaking of Pop-Tarts, on Netflix there's a movie called Frosted, and it's every funny actor that's working right now. It was done by Jerry Seinfeld, and it's stupid and pretty funny. Like it's a fictional tale about the advent of Pop-Tarts. So
You watch all the good stuff.
I do. It's Coley and I are big Seinfeld fans, so like that's back in the show, back in those days. So then we continue on, and you have this idea, which in this is such an interesting phrasing, and I don't really know what to do with it. I don't talk about it, but all of a sudden Jesus is like, "Take up your cross and follow me."
I think he's doubling down after what happened with Peter.
Mhm.
Like, I got to really get to the nitty gritty with them on that.
Yeah. What did you say?
It's like he's got to get to the nitty gritty
Okay,
after
yeah.
what happened with Peter. It's like, I got to clear the air. You know, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not coming with the charger and the sword. This is the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been telling you, but I got to tell you again. Listen carefully.
Yeah. The whole face palms thing, right? Like you got to deny yourself, take up your cross, follow me. Whoever saves his life will lose it. Loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it that a man gains the whole world yet loses his soul? Like that's or what will it give in exchange for his soul? Like Son of Man will come in, glory his Father with all the angels, and he will reward each according to his works. Surely I say to you, there is some standing here that shall not taste death till the Son of Man comes in his kingdom. It's a weird verse. I think that's what Pam wanted to talk about. Like that's so let's talk about that paragraph there. In my Bible, it's all these red letters of Jesus. You know, verse 24 through 28. Like it's all stuff that it's obvious, but it gets kind of more unhinged as it goes when we get to that last verse. So does anyone have any thoughts about what he's saying here?
In the last verse?
Just that whole section, but that could include the last verse.
Well, I think like Lee, that he's just reiterating to them that it's not what you think. This is the way it is, and if you want to follow me, you're going to have trials. You're going to be challenged. You're going to have to pick up your cross and come too. And your cross isn't my cross, although in many of their cases it was a similar cross. I think he's challenging them, and the last verse is kind of interesting, and I waited to hear Pam.
Did you have a thought, Pam, on the last verse?
Well, the way it comes across to me is like he says, there are some standing here that won't taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So to me, it's saying there are some standing here, and you'll be okay for now, but when we come back, and there's a judgment, then you can see death or hell.
Yeah.
If you don't follow, depending what you decide to follow. I don't know if that's what he's saying or not, but it sounds like some of them will taste death when they see him coming in his kingdom.
Yeah, I've never really known what to do with this verse.
So it's coming in his kingdom, and coming into his kingdom. Does that mean his death and resurrection and rising to heaven, or does it mean his re-entry into this world in judgment?
I always thought it was the crucifixion.
That's what
how
I thought.
interpreted it.
Yeah, they could
But
mean.
I
they
know
could
others
mean,
who don't feel that way.
Yeah.
It could mean the crucifixion too.
Yeah.
But still, the point is, some are going to taste death at some point. Some standing.
Well, and is that like a reference to Judas? Like that's around the crucifixion. It's such a weird verse, and I've always kind of understood it as the cross.
Yeah.
And the main reason why I've always understood it as the cross is, like, I strongly put the point of our salvation, like the pinpoint of our salvation, isn't when I finally figured all of this out, isn't when I finally confessed everything correctly. Like, that's the pinpoint of my salvation happened when Jesus died and rose again. Like that's the pinpoint I put on my salvation.
Is that what you call the theology of the cross?
That's what I call theology of the cross. That's one of the parts of that. And then I think that's why I always talk about there's all this freedom afterwards, because your salvation is is different than yourself. Like it's a part as another part. Like it's a part of yourself. And so that your salvation is in those things. That's also why I don't like the view that it's the confession. Like that's and because he keeps going to all these things, because it talks about all this stuff that we've been talking about before, about how if you what do you gain if you gain the whole world but lose your soul, lose who you are. Your soul is that kind of that inmost. I think we over spiritualize the soul, I think, a little bit too much. That it's like this, but it's like who you are. Yeah, your essence type of thing. And so for the Son, he's talking like he'll come in his glory and all these things. And one thing I want to show to you is where we're going in all of this. Is there's this whole fun time in chapter 18 and 19 and 20 that's where the rich young ruler is. That's where all these stories about the little children coming to Jesus and them trying to push the little children away. It's the disciples are trying to become like they're asking for, like, can we be at your right and left in your glory? Like, it's all this stuff about being big and powerful and all this stuff. We're gonna have a fun time going through that, because this chapters really 17, 18, 19, and 20 were one of my first big revelations in Matthew and in the Bible, where I was like, oh, this stuff is actually meant to be read together and not by itself. Like that's
story.
Yeah, it's a story. And Matthew does that section better than Mark does, in my opinion. And so because I think this is Matthew's point, is about the procedure and loving your neighbor as yourself, is the outpouring. And when we rely on pride, it's hard to do that. It's hard to love your neighbor as yourself. And so that's good. So I think verse 28 there is all about the crucifixion and all that. But who knows? We might in 100 years or 1,000 years or the next millennia think differently. Like that's so. Let's see. Were there any other things about this chapter? No. Well,
The Transfiguration. Oh boy.
yeah. Let's read. I've been enjoying, because all this has been building. I've been enjoying reading the chapter, and we've had enough time. So let's read chapter 17 before we are done. And it's the Transfiguration. And for those of you that this may help in your own walk and all that stuff, I did not know what the Transfiguration was, what that term meant, until I was a pastor. Like that. That's
By the way,
like
happy Ascension Day.
Oh yeah. But like I was like, what is this? I knew the story, but I just didn't know it was called the Transfiguration. And so, like that's.
It's interesting, and I'm not going to go into it very much, but this the end of in 28. At one point, I was taught that it was a reference to the Transfiguration that was coming in a week.
Oh.
Because that's when you see Jesus.
Okay.
Connected to God.
That's interesting.
But nobody else had said that, and I don't know that I would agree.
Well, like
agree with the idea that it's the crucifixion. That's what I was told when I was a kid.
So like but it's right after it. Right. So like that's so he says, that's true. Some of you are standing here, and it's probably not all of his disciples that are standing there either. It's probably there's
right.
A lot of people standing around. So let's read this and remember that verse 28 comes right before what we're reading. Here we go.
Now after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, led them up on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus,
Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah.
While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and suddenly a voice came out of the cloud, saying,
This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him.
And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. But Jesus came and touched them.
Arise, and do not be afraid.
When they had lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. Now, as they came down from the mountain, Jesus commanded them,
Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man is risen from the dead.
Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?
Indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah has come already. And they did not know him, but did to him whatever they wished. Likewise, the Son of Man is also about to suffer at their hands.
Then the disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him.
Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffers severely. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him.
O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me.
And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him. And the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately.
Why could we not cast it out?
Because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting.
Now while they were staying in Galilee, Jesus said to them,
The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And the third day he will be raised up.
And they were exceedingly sorrowful. When they had come to Capernaum, those who received the temple tax came to Peter.
Does your teacher not pay the temple tax?
Yes.
And when he had come into the house, Jesus anticipated him.
What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take customs or taxes? From their sons or from strangers?
From strangers.
Then the sons are free. Nevertheless, lest we offend them, go to the sea, cast in a hook, and take the fish that comes up first. And when you have opened its mouth, you will find a piece of money. Take that and give it to them, for me and you.
I like the laugh there at the end.
Yeah.
That's, I think I'll let it continue going. Let's see. All right. So like that's the next part in there. There'll be some fun things to talk about next week, and so yeah, that's thank you all for coming today, and for everyone that's watching on YouTube later on, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Excellent. So, are there any prayer requests?
Judy.
Do what?
Judy.
Judy?
Yeah.
Judy Hunter? Yeah. Is she still, she's in the rehab clinic now?
Yes, still.
Yeah. So, we got
Alan Dar's Bowman who are left without his support.
what?
Alan Dar.
Yeah.
Woman.
They don't have their support anymore?
No.
No.
What's her
name? Louise.
Oh, Louise.
Yeah, she passed away. And,
Louise passed? I haven't heard about any of this. Oh, it's been a crazy couple of days. So Louise passed away. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we'll keep them in the prayers.
and of course, Louise's family.
Yeah, Louise's family. Yeah. So anything else? Anything else? All right. Well, we'll say a prayer as we end here. God, we thank you for the days that you give us. And Lord, we ask that you continue to be with all those that are suffering with hurts and pains and loss. Lord, continue to guide and be with them all. And Lord, as we look forward to your resurrection, may we wait with patience and bated breath for the great unification, that we all will all be together again. And Lord, continue to open your scriptures to us, that we may see you and how you work with your people, that we know that you are enough and that you bring us so many good things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Excellent.
Well, you did a fine job of getting the blood up there.
Good. That's the purpose. That's the purpose. Pam, it's good seeing you.
Hi. Yeah.